this partner starts to feel that what I say, what I feel just does not matter. That's just absolutely heartbreaking. Love is not just about finding a person and going like, yeah, we found each other and we've committed to each other and we're together for life now. Love requires maintenance. So if as a couple you feel that you're lagging somewhere, you need to equip yourself with those tools. You need to be reading about developing healthier ways of speaking to each other. You need to equip yourself with better ways of communicating, you know.
Pour the Heart Out, Episode 9, Fights and Misunderstandings.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 9 of Pour the Heart Out. We're back after a long time, and this time we're back with a very special topic. We're talking about fights, we're talking about conflicts, we're talking about misunderstandings, breakups, frustration, and pretty much everything in middle. Once again, I have with me Praneet Kaur, who by now needs no introduction. Hi, Praneet. Hope you're doing good. So let's start without further ado. And I think let's start by understanding how normal do you think these fights and conflicts are in a relationship?
Right. Well, as normal as it gets. It is definitely a very unpopular opinion. We think that if you're in a relationship, then it means that you have to make sure that there are no conflicts, because somehow we equate the health of a relationship or happiness of a couple to the level of conflict that there is. Like, the lesser the conflict, the more the happiness. However, the research says something absolutely opposite. The research says that the happiness of a couple is determined by the skills that the couples have around managing conflict. So, the more skills you have to manage conflict, the more happier you're going to be as a couple, which makes it very obvious that conflicts are a very normal part and parcel of a relationship. And it's important to understand why. Now, it's not that, oh, there are always going to be fights, and I don't want to promote this idea, because then this normalizes the fact that where there is love there is fight. That's not true, because that can sometimes be a very unhealthy toxic statement, because sometimes we stay in toxic relationships by justifying it using this statement. But the it's actually so conflict happens every time that there's going to be two people involved in a relationship, and that's because no two people are always going to be absolutely alike. They are going to have different personalities, different mindsets. They will come from different backgrounds. That would lead to having different belief systems, value systems altogether. And whenever two such people will come together, there is going to be conflict, there is going to be differences and fights. And that is the case in workplaces, that is the case among us siblings, that is the case with parent children, in really all equations of our life. Why is conflict the center of all our relationships? Is because we are interacting with other human beings, and wherever there is a scope of interaction within another human being, there is a scope of conflict, because no two human beings come to be absolutely similar and agreeing on everything. Not even identical twins, even they have different belief systems. So how can we expect two partners in a relationship to be absolutely alike? So, yes, conflicts are very normal. In fact, they are important to determine the health of a relationship. How you cope from the conflict is going to be the defining factor of where your relationship lies.
And Praneet, how do these conflicts affect us as individuals, and how does it affect the dynamic? How does it affect the relationship?
So both of these two things are very intertwined. The conflict in a relationship tends to affect both the individuals on a personal level, and how this affects them on a personal level affects the integrity and the health of the relationship as well. And again, how the relationship is affected in turn affects the individuals and their self-esteem. So it's very intertwined. Why? Because we're social beings. We draw a lot of sense of self from how what is the quality of our relationships, or how our partner is treating us. And that is not just romantic relationships, but definitely more so in romantic relationships than other relationships. There's a lot of um, defining ourselves that we do from our relationship. There's a lot of value that we draw, a lot of sense of worth that we draw. in fact we start to define ourselves as from the eyes of our partner after a certain point. So I think it's safe to say that we're sort of hardwired also to have our sense of self be so intertwined with our social interactions. And this is a romantic relationship that we're talking about. This is our the one, our soulmate, and someone that we at least intend to spend a lot more time with than all our other social interactions. And if a relationship is going down the drain, and if there is both the partners putting each other down, having constant long hours of conflict and very long rough patches, then that starts to take a toll on how these two individuals would evaluate themselves as individuals as well, and not necessarily as partners to each other. So a lot of times we've seen that when individuals who come from high conflicting relationships, they have a lower self-esteem than the ones who come from healthy relationships, because these individuals carry a big baggage of self-doubt, where they think that they're not worthy of love, they're not deserving of love, or they're not someone who's capable of giving or receiving love. And a lot of other belief systems walk in along with this, wherein individuals start to feel that, I am too aggressive, I am too prude, or I'm too much of an insecure person. Basically, whatever your partner throws at you, however your partner attacks you, when both of you are in conflict, that starts to become a part of your inner voice, that starts to get internalized, and that's how then you start to speak to yourself, and that reflects in how you evaluate yourself overall. So and this is just the mental health part of it. This is how you evaluate yourself in a relationship that is under conflict. But there is so much of evidence now that shows that when you are in a high conflicted relationship, your physical health starts to take a massive toll as well. You start to feel there is a lot of parallel drawn between having cardiovascular issues and blood pressure issues, and in the long term having issues like diabetes, or developing alcoholism, and if you are coming from a high conflicted relationship equation. So overall, I think the quality of your relationships are going to determine the quality of your life, your mental well-being, and your physical well-being. And then that, when you as an individual are coming to a relationship, bringing in the level of physical well-being that you have and the level of mental well-being that you have to the relationship, then that is going to determine the well-being of the relationship as well. So two conflicted individuals will give birth to a conflicted relationship, and a conflicted relationship would lead to these two individuals becoming more conflicted within themselves, right? So it's quite intertwined. So, I always say this to all my clients, that we never heal ourselves in isolation. It's always through relationships, through our interactions with other people, that we heal ourselves. And that is the very same way that we also unheal ourselves, or we sort of burden ourselves with the baggages of a lot of things. So it really comes down to how conscious we are, and it really comes down to making a choice as to what do we want to take out from our interactions with our partner, and where do we want to take our relationship, and what are we going to draw from it. So your relationships can be a place where both of you come together to understand each other's love language, to understand each other's traumas, and grow together and heal together. And as a result of that, heal your relationship. And then a healthy relationship will, it's basically a romantic relationship is the unit of a community. It's the basic unit of a family. It's the basic unit of a society. And that's how you begin from one and you start to heal the rest of it, right? So how your relationship is going to be and what the health of it is going to be is going to really determine a great deal of how you're doing and how your family is doing, and then how subsequently your community and your society is doing.
And as we discuss this, another question that immediately comes to my mind is, so you mentioned how healthy relationships, unhealthy relationships, right? And fights are going to be a part of both of them. So how does one identify if the conflicts, misunderstanding, fights are still on the healthy ground, and how do you draw the line for yourself?
That's a very important question to ask. If I think there are a few markers. If a conflict is coming up again and again, and if it is something that triggers both the partners in the ways that they are having difficulty going back to their normal or healthy side, then it's just going to become an unhealthy pattern overall, and just something that is going to get repeated. Then there are a couple of things. Now, I think there's one fact that I came across in a research, and it really blew my mind, and that is that it said that I think about 65% of conflicts in a romantic relationship never get resolved. In fact, they don't exist to be resolved. So you need to learn to manage these conflicts, right? Which then makes more sense when we look at this statement that a healthy relationship is not where there is low level of conflict, but it is the one where couples learn how to manage their conflict, because conflict is going to be there and not every conflict has a resolution to it. You just need to learn how to manage uh, the conflict, and how to continue to be together with that quality. So, Dr. Gottman is someone who's done a massive amount of research on relationships and conflicts in relationships. And he would observe couples in their living room, in their kitchen, and them interacting with each other, and what would their body language be like when they'll be in conflict. And it's amazing work that he's done. And I think he's made the path a lot easier for all of us to follow. So his research has determined that there are four basically things that are going to determine if the relationship is going to come down to the point of a breakup, or just two people parting ways. And he says that these things are really the four horsemen of apocalypse in a relationship. So the first one is criticism. This is when you're having healthy conflict. You're not agreeing to each other, and it's coming up, and that's great until and unless you're not making it into personal attacks. That's where it starts to turn unhealthy. So if you've now started to make it about not the issue that both of us have, but about you, my partner. You are someone who does this. So it's not about, you didn't check up on me when I was sick. I really wanted you to check up on me. This is a conflict. But saying that you're careless, you don't care about me, you're selfish, you only care about yourself. Now, this is a personal attack. This is criticism. And then you hold on to it, and you make sure that you mention it every time such an issue comes up in a relationship. And now your partner is constantly trying to make sure that they don't come across as selfish to you, and they're trying to hide certain parts of themselves or glorify certain parts of themselves, where they can prove you that you're not selfish. And they will do like 10 things right, and then one day they will mess it up again, and again you will throw the personal attack of them being selfish, and they'll be like, whatever I do is not enough for you. You don't see how I'm improving, or how far we've come. And 99 things all right, one thing goes wrong, and you come back and you criticize me. And in that moment you realize that that's not true. I don't think they're selfish anymore, but I'm keeping scores, right? I can't lose. So I can't lose face in this conflict. So I'm going to be like, oh, but what about that time when you did that? And then it just escalates, right? So criticism, when you make it a personal attack instead of this went wrong, or when you did this, I felt this, it's criticism is when from you did this, it becomes you are this, that's when it becomes very personal, and conflict becomes unhealthy. Second is contempt. When you start to make your partner feel so small and so little, that you start to put them down, and you start to like just rolling of the eyes, and or these just making that smirk or that face that you know nothing, you don't know what you're talking about. So all of these gestures are very hurtful, and they're full of that. This is the moment where the partner gets up and says, "Oh, look at your arrogance," or "Look how full you are of yourself," or "Look at that ego." So what is this happening? This is one partner throwing contempt at the other partner, right? The third one is defensiveness. So this is when I'm trying to tell you how I feel, and I'm trying to tell you what you did, how that affected me, and you start becoming very defensive, and you have a wall. There is a wall between you and me, and now anything that I'm saying is not getting to you, is not getting through, and it's now all about me attacking you, or at least perceived attack, and you trying to defend yourself. So none of what I say is coming to your ears for you to genuinely listen to it and absorb it, and then see what can you do differently to make things better. But you're listening to me to now come back with an even stronger argument, because we're keeping scores again, right? And finally, it's the fourth horseman is stonewalling, where I just go completely cold on you, and I'm absolutely indifferent. And you're looking at me and you're talking to me, and I'm just looking away, and I'm in my phone, and you're telling me that I'm hurting you, and I'm doing something that makes you feel that I don't care that you're hurt. Where this partner starts to feel that what I say, what I feel, just does not matter. That's just absolutely heartbreaking. So when any of these four things start to happen in a relationship, we know that this is now going towards potential breakup. This is where conflict management is zero. There is a lot of unhealthy patterns coming up, and the partners are not ready to manage the fights that are coming up again and again. So this, I think this is wonderful work done by Dr. Gottman, where we can use these things as tools to check with us. So I actually encourage all the couples listening to us right now that use these four things as your checklist, and see what of these uh, factors are prevalent in your relationship. So I remember it as CCDs. So C, contempt, C, criticism, D, defensiveness, and S is stonewalling. So yeah, check with yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a very conclusive and a very well structured research, and it's definitely going to help a lot of us hearing this right now. So, just picking up on a couple of things again that you mentioned and going a little more detailed into the conflict discussion. So, a lot of times we see that two people genuinely want to look out for each other, genuinely there for each other, genuinely in love, but at the same time, they just do not understand each other. It just feels like things are just flying over their heads. So, why does this happen?
Hmm. Right. So when we say that two people genuinely love each other, what we know from this is that there is definitely commitment in the relationship, right? And we've spoken, if our viewers would remember, that we've spoken about three pillars of a relationship. One being passion, which is the sex or the romantic part of it. Second being intimacy, which is emotional intimacy, the friendship part, the talking and sharing part of it. And third being commitment, which is that we completely are there for each other, for all parts of each other, and we're not picking and choosing. So when we say that two people completely love each other, what we're establishing is that both of them are completely committed towards each other. But there is one part of commitment that we usually fail to look at, and that is where we're not just committing to the good times or the parts of my partner that I like, or the parts of my partner because of which I am here. But the moment I commit to the good parts and the fun parts and the pretty parts of my partner, I automatically also sign up for the ugly parts, the flawed parts, the imperfect parts, the parts that are messy, the parts that have been traumatized, the parts that are coming from a very difficult past, So this is what your partner is comprised of, and this is what your relationship is comprised of. So when you say that, both of you are deeply in love with each other, but we're not understanding each other, then it means that it's important to to make that love more inclusive, more inclusive of conflicts, more inclusive of the times when things are not the best. That is why, when we look at all these Western TV shows, we listen to those vows, the wedding vows, and they say, in sickness and in health, in good times and in worst times, in through thick and thin, which is establishing that there is a thin, there is a sickness, and there is a worst time. So when two partners really love each other, but they still do not really understand each other, that's because they're only looking at the fun parts, the good parts, and embracing them, and really hoping that everything else will get better on its own, or hoping to not deal with everything else. And that's just not how relationships work. So two people who are deeply in love but are also very are always in conflict show that they have very low level of conflict management. And it is just a sign, and yeah, a sign for them to maybe sit together and equip themselves with skills of conflict management, because this is something that you have to learn. And this is where that part comes in, where I always talk about that, love is not just about finding a person and going like, yeah, we found each other and we've committed to each other and we're together for life now. Love requires maintenance. So if as a couple you feel that you're lagging somewhere, you need to equip yourself with those tools. You need to be reading about developing healthier ways of speaking to each other. You need to equip yourself with better ways of communicating, and yeah, and I think one thing that is also very important is that even though both of you really, really love each other, when you're fighting, you only bring out the most nasty sides of each other, you know, and you're hurting the partner that you love the most. And in that time, it's really difficult to remember that this is us who really love each other. So it's very important to have um, unconditional fights that are based on unconditional love, where you both reassure each other that, I truly love you, but this is something that you've done that has really hurt me. This does not change the fact that I still love you. To establish that in the middle of conflict can change really everything. It can change the pace, the tone, the way that you're coming at each other and attacking each other, because then that automatically puts both of you on the same team and your conflicts on the other team. And then it's you versus both of you versus your conflicts, and not you versus your partner. And that is where the entire game changes. And I think another thing which can be very useful for the couples out there is also something that is established by Dr. Gottman, that he says that, in order to keep a relationship healthy, the conflicts have to be managed in the 1:5 ratio. That if there is one conflict or one negative full blown outbreak, then that has to be followed by at least 5 times that you have positive interactions with each other, that you share intimacy, throw compliments at each other, and that's how you're going to do the repair. That is what the aftermath of a conflict looks like, that it has to be 1:5. So I think this is also one of the major demarcating factors, that in relationships where there are lots of fight and couples are always fighting, and he calls them as the volatile couple, where they have a full blown fight, but their repair work is also very strong. Their making up phase lasts for a very long time, and they do it with all the passion that they have. They take responsibility, they tell each other what is it that they love and like about each other, and there is a whole investment in the repair process of it as well, and not brushing it under the carpet. So yeah, I think conflict is going to be there inevitably, of course. So what you do in the aftermath of conflict is also something that makes all the difference.
So, Praneet, like you mentioned that an ideal pattern to go with would be 1:5, but there are so many couples who just have this constant, almost patches or phases where they're just fighting, fighting, fighting every day. some or the other jhagda, right? So, what do you think is going on here? How is it going to affect them? And of course, we'll come to the resolution part of it, how they can, if at all, find their way out of it.
So one is, of course, we established that when people have long patches of fight, it's because they have very low conflict management skills. They're very low on that as a couple and as individuals. It also reflects some of the belief system that these people may have. So for all of those couples listening to us right now who have very high conflicted relationships, just like listen up and let these be some of the markers that you can check in with yourself and see, what's going on in your relationship. So one is, maybe there is some distortion on the belief system level, right? Belief systems such as, if my relationship is conflicted, it means we're going to grow apart. It means the end of the relationship is approaching. Usually when we grow up in families where it was a very high conflicted family, or the parents had a very high conflicted marriage, children establish, and parents are either separated or divorced, or were of the nature where they were repeatedly getting separated and getting back together. What children of such parents automatically conclude is that whenever there is a conflict, it means the end of the relationship. So they do not look at conflict as, from that place where they need to sit down, understand what the partner was saying, understand where they were coming from, and look at conflict from that bird's eye view in order to be able to resolve it. But for them, conflict is like fight or flight. It's over. Brain immediately goes into that survival mode and starts to wrap the head around the fact that now it's going to get over. So they sort of start to get prepared that ab to sab khatam hone wala hai, so how do I save my ass and just like get out of it, right? So it's very important to check in with yourself and ask yourself that, is this a belief system that you carry? The moment you and your partner have fights, do you automatically conclude that now things are going to go crazy or haywire? And it might not always be very direct, it can be very disguised. One of the ways that you can check with yourself is that when both of you have conflict and it doesn't get resolved, and both of you all go to sleep in your own houses, or you're together, and you are anxious the entire night as if there is no tomorrow, as if this has to be fixed today before we go off to sleep, you know so this is where it is reflecting the belief system that there is somehow this massive anxiety wrapped around the idea of conflict, and you're not looking at or approaching conflict from that place where you think it's normal. We're going to fight. There has been a disagreement, or there has been a very nasty disagreement for that matter. But we'll fix it. But that fundamental belief that we're going to fix it together is lacking, and because of that, there is all this. There is automatically you giving up on your relationship in face of conflict. So sometimes that is why long patches of conflicts, because you're not addressing the issues. You're terribly scared to do so. So this is on the belief system level. Now, it can also happen on the level of communication, like we discussed, that you're too defensive, you are always attacking each other. So in that regard, you need to check with yourself, and you need to see that whenever you interact, instead of looking at what your partner does, look at yourself and see, how do I approach conflicts? How do I talk to my partner when we are in conflict? Do I immediately put on my armor and just pick up all the things and all the problems that I have with my partner? And even though we're having a conflict which is about this particular thing, I bring out all those other things because I'm running out of weapons. And I need to weaponize myself by talking about the things that have happened several months back. So, there are a lot of jokes made around this thing that 4 mahine purani baat nikal ke the partner will fight. But we need to understand, why do we do this? We do this when we start to feel unsafe in an argument, when we start to feel threatened. And that's when we start to keep scores also. In order to feel that I'm okay and I'm not under threat and I'm not unsafe, we need to see ourselves winning. We need to see ourselves in power. And that also is a reflection of some kind of childhood trauma. Which brings me to the third point. So one is to understand on your conflict on the belief system level. Second is on the communication level, and third is on the trauma level. what are the traumas that your partner is coming from, what are the traumas that you're coming from. Something that may be very, very triggering for you because of your childhood trauma, maybe something that may not be very triggering for your partner, and they bring it up very casually every time, only to leave you more triggered, and you don't understand why do you have such a massive reaction out of it, right? Let's understand that with an example. So, for example, you know, your partner um, doesn't very casually says that, this color doesn't quite suit you. uh, it doesn't really go with you. Why don't you try this color? And both of you getting dressed and you're going out, and you get really triggered by that, and you feel that your partner is putting you down, or they're body shaming you and things like that, even though that might not be the case. Now maybe you're so triggered by it because you have been body shamed, or you have been told that certain clothes don't look good on you, or certain colors don't look or go with your complexion. And because that has done to you so much, that has been done to you so much in the past, you think that your partner is also doing the same thing. But this is you perceiving threat even in the place where there isn't any, right? So it's important to get in touch with your traumas and to communicate this with your partner, that I'm sorry if I reacted a little too much. It may be very bizarre for you, but this is where I'm coming from. And making sure that you're only sharing this with your partner so that they know that they don't take it personally. But it is not their responsibility to make you feel better about this. This is your trauma, and you're going to have to take responsibility of resolving it, right? This is like on the side note, very important, because what we do is that the moment we share our trauma stories with our partners, we somehow expect them to take responsibility of our trauma and fix it for us. And if they don't do that, we hold them responsible, and we go like, but I told you where I'm coming from, how can you treat me like this? You have to understand this is where I'm coming from. No, it's not their job. You told them so that they don't take it personally and the conflict doesn't go out of proportion, right? So you all, both of you are responsible for your own stories and fixing your own traumas. But it's important to understand what your partner's trauma was and what your trauma was. And that is just going to make a lot of things easier. And you're going to understand, oh, that's why, like, we really have these aha moments in sessions when couples come and they realize, oh, that's why I react so much. We're not aware ourselves. So the most triggering conversations or fights, go back and see what is it about them that's so triggering, and you will get a lot of insight into your past traumas. And finally, learning each other's love language. That is very important. When we don't know what my partner's love language is, and we assume that my partner also operates the way I operate, that is where also when the conflicts just linger on. So, for example, because of my past traumas, etc., I am someone who wants to resolve the conflict before I go to sleep. But my partner is someone who doesn't want to talk in that moment, wants to take some time off and discuss about it, once both of us are, in a rather calm headspace. So my love language is that my partner comes and pacifies me or reassures me there and then, because for me, if we are fighting, the relationship is ending. So I need that reassurance right now. So my partner turning around and sleeping is a sign of them leaving me, for me in my head. And for my partner, it is just the space that they're giving me and themselves so that we can genuinely resolve our trauma. So these are our love languages, and we need to speak about them. Maybe the conflict is always around the fact that you're not materialistic at all. You don't express your love in materialistic manner. So maybe my love language is that I want it to be materialistic, whereas for my partner, it's a very cold gesture. For them, maybe it's writing a letter that they want. For them, maybe they want to show their affection in public. And for me, maybe it's very uncomfortable. So when I reject, when I don't reciprocate when they're showing affection in public, they feel rejected and they take it personally. So this is also where the conflict lingers on. So these are the differences in personalities and belief systems and personal stories that we're talking about. So we need to know each other's love languages, and for that we need to communicate We need to sit down, and essentially it just boils down to, let's talk about why are we fighting for about a month now, right? And having like a pre-talk before that, that let's set some rules. None of us is going to be defensive. We're not going to attack each other. And if we find either of us attacking each other, we're going to, I don't know, play a buzzer or just like drop a handkerchief or something, and have this conversation when both of you are in a very calm state of mind. So these are some of the things that we need to practice to sort of fall out of that long spell of conflicts that we fall under.
Right, I think that was very helpful, Puneet. Now, moving to the part that I think our viewers would be most awaiting. So, let's understand, according to you, how do you think people can communicate better? How do you think they can work towards resolving these conflicts and avoiding a potential breakup?
So, when couples have long patches of fights that they've been fighting for days, weeks, or months, they somehow start to enter in a headspace where they are becoming hopeless now, and they think that it cannot be resolved. Things can't get better. We're just in a loop, and that's a dangerous place to enter into. But actually, if you look at it, it's just coming from a place of massive, unresolved, pent up frustration, right? That we're just fighting, and because they've not done any resolution in the past, it just all feels like it has gotten piled up. So the first step towards conflict resolution would be taking a break, really, and that does not mean the famous Ross and Rachel break. No, not that. Just taking a break from the moment, not from each other, right? Just cooling off, going out for yogurt, like Ross suggested. So, like, genuinely taking a break from the conflict. Now, what does that look like? It is also very important to know, what do you do in that break? So this break would actually comprise of physiologically soothing yourself. Because when you are in a conflict, it's not just you, your mind, or your mouth or your words that are fighting. It is literally your body also that's fighting. Like I said, that your body enters into a fight or flight mode. That's why you start to keep scores, because your mind tells you that there is a threat and you need to protect yourself. And one of the many ways that you protect yourself is by one, scorekeeping. Then there is acting defensive or attacking your partner back. And because you feel that what will happen if you're being attacked, you will feel the need to either attack back, or dodge or run away. And that's what you do, right? One of these things is what you do. So it's important for your body to calm down, so as to for it to send a message to your brain that we are not under threat, everything is under control. You don't need to act from your hind brain, which is responsible for the fight or flight. You can come back to the prefrontal cortex and think straight and approach this conflict from a place of rationality and objectivity and calm and the love that you have for each other. And it doesn't have to be a threatening situation that you've entered into. Very important, right? So um, practice physiological soothing, self-soothing, how to do that. Now, when, let's say that, I've had a massive fight with my partner, and now it's just becoming nastier and nastier. So I'm going to call it out, and I'm going to be like, you know what? It's not going anywhere. We're just becoming really nasty to each other. And I know it's hurting you, it's hurting me. Let's take some time out. You know, let's drop this conversation right here. It doesn't look like we're in the headspace where we can talk. Why don't we come back? you know and your partner might not want it, because their body is in a full-fledged fight or flight response, and that energy is built up and they want to throw it on you, and but you're just going to have to excuse yourself from that situation. And then you have to take the responsibility to come back and address it, right? If you're doing the timeout, you will do the coming back and talking about it as well. Now, when you do the timeout, you will find that your jaw is tightened, your back muscles are hurting, or your fists are clenched, or your body's too jittery, or it's too shaky, and you're out of breath, or you're shallow breathing, and your chest is heavy, and you just feel just very, your entire body feels very heavy overall, or your mouth is dry, or you're just really wanting to cry, you're very overwhelmed. All of these physiological responses is what happens when you're in conflict, and without taking care of your body and pulling your body out of the battlefield, you can't pull your mind out of the battlefield. So just sit down, sit back, sit in a relaxed position or lie down, whatever works, and start with the breathing, because the breathing is really the center of your body reaction to various things. So if you're breathing normally, your body sends a message to the brain that everything's okay. There is no threat. We can take care of the situation. The moment you start breathing shallow, which is you know that this sounds only very scary, right? The moment you hear someone panting or gasping for air, something's wrong. If someone calls you and they're just breathing like that, that this is not a good call, this is a bad news call, right? Breathing makes all the difference. This is the cue that they use in movies as well to establish the mood and to set the vibe. So breathing really makes all the difference, right? So you need to begin with calming your breathing down, taking a deep breath in and then a deep breath out. And that's how eventually and slowly your body is going to come back to normal. And you need to give it that time, at least 20 minutes. Your body takes at least 20 minutes for your parasympathetic nervous system to get to work and bring everything down to its normal working pace. And then you need to check in with yourself, with each of the muscle. You know, am I frowning? Are my jaws, is my jaw too tensed? Am I clenching my teeth? Is my tongue very tight right now? Are my shoulders too, too stiff? Do I feel the tension in my neck? Is my chest feeling heavy? And just check in with each and every muscle of your body and try to unclench every muscle. Try to relax every muscle and really breathe into that calmness, And as you take those deeper breaths, completely relax and calm your body down. And once you are in a more control of yourself, of your body, that's when you know that you have entered in a space where you're not operating from fight or flight anymore, where you're not thinking that this is a threatful situation for you anymore. So this is the first step that you need to do. This will help you take care of that frustration that you had. And this will at least put you in a frame of mind where you're now at least someone who can contemplate or think about going to your partner and resolving this. Step one. Step two. Now, when you actually go to your partner, they're going to say something that can still trigger you. So before you go to them, it's very important to understand, go back to that conflict in your head and try to understand, why did you say what you said? Why did your partner say what they said? You see, behind and underneath every conflict, there is an unmet expectation, right? The moment I cater to that expectation, I realize that the words don't matter. Though those hurting, expressions that were used, they are not what this conflict is. This conflict is about those unmet expectations. For example, when I tell my partner that, you're so selfish, it's very triggering for them. But what is my unmet expectation underneath that? That I just want to spend more time with you. I just want you to come back from work and, give me a soothing hug. I just want you to listen to me and look at me when I'm talking. I want to feel heard. That's what I want. But what I'm communicating to my partner is that you're selfish, you don't care, you only think about yourself, you're the most self-centered person. That's why your mother fell into depression. That's why your family abandoned you. And all these vulnerable things that our partners have told us in a moment of trust and faith, we come back and we throw it in their faces, in the time of in times of conflicts. But the truth is that deep down, what we're wanting is, we're just wanting their attention and their love, and we want to be seen and heard. So this is what you wanted. This is to understand the underlying need and expectation, and do the same thing with your partner. So when your partner says that, I just want you to come over and spend some time with me, why don't you come over? And you're saying that, I'm someone who doesn't like to meet as much, I want my own space, and they're like, oh, you're always wanting your space, why don't we break up only? So understand that they don't really mean to break up, but they're just wanting to spend more time with you, they want to see you more. And that is not a sign of someone who's wanting to leave you, that is a sign of someone who's wanting to be with you all the more. So the moment you would tap into the underlying need and expectation of your own and your partner's, a lot of things are going to become clearer. And then it is about genuinely going to your partner and then communicating. Now, it's important that you communicate it in the right manner, right? And this is where all the communication tools come in. So I think one of the most important ones is that you communicate it in the way that you understand it, which is that you tell them your expectation instead of the attacking part of it. So instead of saying that you're selfish, you don't care about me, say things like, I want you to spend more time with me. I want you to come back from work and not touch the phone or the TV for an hour and just like tune in, and check with me. And I want to check with you, and I want to see how our days are going, or when we finally meet after, because lockdown and everything, and we're not able to meet as much. When we finally meet, I don't want to go and watch a movie. If that's something that you like to do, great, we'll do that as well. But I also want an hour of uninterrupted conversation where we both can, communicate to each other and just like catch up really. So there it has a little bit of you and a little bit of me, a little bit of what both of us want. So beginning your communication with statements that begin with I instead of you. You did this, or you never do this, or you always do this, going like, I want this, I feel this way, I would like it, you know. So that is the third thing. And finally, I think to realize that there is going to be compromise in every relationship. Now, this is one very tricky word, which is used around in the wrong, in the worst ways ever, and it's very important to put this into perspective. First of all, compromise is not synonymous to sacrifice. Sacrifice is where only one person keeps giving up in order to have the boat keep sailing. Compromise is about both people losing something and both people gaining something. And it is about basically coming together to a middle ground where both of you have gained something. You've also lost something that was equally important to both of you individually. But what you've gained has more importance, and it is about feeling respected and honored and loved by your partner because of the compromise that they've made, and vice versa. So instead of again keeping scores and going like, I gave up this, what did you give up for me? you know that's not how compromise works. You gave up, that's your choice. It's not here for transaction, it's not here for negotiation. Compromise is where both of you sit together and you go. For example, we discussed this instance where one of the partners wants more space and is more of an introvert, doesn't like to go out as much, but this other partner likes to go out with their partner, and they like to do things together and they like to socialize together. So both of them will have to sit down, look at their problem, and instead of going, this partner going like, I don't even like going out, I went out for you the other day, what are you doing for me? That's sacrifice. Compromises when both of you sit together and you go like, yeah, you know what, I don't like to go out, and this partner going like, but I want you to go out, what can we do? So for this, it's an activity that I do with a lot of my couple clients, that I ask them to switch places, like figuratively and literally. And then I ask them, why don't you play the role of a partner who's introvert and doesn't want to go out? And why don't you play the role of a partner who loves socializing and loves to take the partner with you? And now you tell me, how will you come to a common ground? Because then the introvert partner is vouching for the extrovert one, The partner who likes to go out is vouching for the introvert partner, and then they're able to come to a middle ground. That, you know what, I like more intimate parties, I like more like people, and I like to do things together. Why don't we organize a house party where there is a little bit of what I want and a little bit of what you want, or whatever. Like, so many creative solutions couples come up with. It's almost magical to see that happen in a therapy room when both of them are looking at their conflicts from a place of, let's sit together and resolve what our problem is, instead of going like, you do this, you do that. And that transition, I'll tell you, Isha, is so beautiful to watch. It's really like a movie unfolding in front of you, where you see these two people walking in with almost no hope that things are going to work, and then walking out hand in hand and going like, what, we have established that our happily ever after is comprised of all these conflicts, and it's going to be a part and parcel of it, and we're just going to have to navigate, how to manage.
I think, Praneet, that's a very beautiful note to end this episode on. I mean, just understanding that all of these things are going to happen. It's a part and parcel of being with someone, but it's so important to also understand, like you said, their love language, understand how to communicate better, and just so many things. And yeah, thank you so much. This has been so insightful. I really hope we were able to answer a lot of questions that our viewers might have. But if we didn't, and if you do have some more questions, do make sure to put them down in the comments, and we will get to them at some point. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll be back next week with another episode. Till then, keep pouring your heart out.